Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host, she's the middle child, Leanne Hughes.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Leanne Hughes, and I'm here to help you create unpredictable workshop experiences that predictably work. Last week on the show, we had the incredible Susie Daphnis, and she was sharing her amazing tips for building the energy in your virtual summits, as well as how to promote your work through the power of word of mouth marketing and how you embed that in your workshop experiences. Now, today's conversation happened as a result of a previous conversation I had with this guest. We were just having a chat, and after about 10 minutes of talking about facilitation, I said, oh my gosh, I wish I'd recorded this. This should have been a podcast episode. So we regrouped. And the reason why I brought him on is because we were talking a lot about mural templates, but we expand into a lot more territory in this, including how to really bring that contrast into your workshops. Contrast, if you've been listening to the show, is my favorite word and my key criteria for workshop design. Today's guest is Mike Knapp from Incrementa, and he believes there is a better way for business owners and leaders to build their businesses and achieve their big goals. His passion is to make you the hero of your own story. And as your guide, coach, and advisor, Mike uses best practice frameworks to simplify the art of strategy and discipline of execution so they become an integral part of your foundation. Over the last 20 years, Mike has worked with more than 100 companies ranging from startups to third-generation family businesses in almost every sector, helping them achieve their goals. Now, in this conversation, Mike shares how he transitioned from the IT guy to someone who led digital transformation projects using the superpower of facilitation and putting people first before technology. This is a great conversation if you work in big, complex organizations implementing change, or if you want to step into the world of change management. And Mike also shares the importance of energy and how his practice in meditation allows him to create a welcoming space for his participants. And of course, he has another talent in developing mural templates, and he shares how he structures these in a way that pulls you into a story. And we also riff on how much preparation work is enough. There's a question for you. How much prep work do you put in before a workshop? Please reach out to Mike after the show to let him know what your favorite takeaway was from this chat. And if you'd like to support the show, you can buy me a coffee and really fuel my caffeine ideation addiction over at buymeacoffee.com/Leanne Hughes. Now, Mike's contact details, the video interview, link to resources is all over in the show notes for this one at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 158. Now, onto the show. I am so excited to welcome onto the First Time Facilitator podcast, Mike Knapp. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Leanne. I was a little surprised by it, and I'm so excited to talk with you.
Well, it's quite funny because we had a chat before, and as we were talking, I was thinking, oh my goodness. And this wasn't a podcast chat. This was just like a general chat. The whole time we were talking, like, this needs to be recorded. This needs to go on the podcast. Hence the invitation, because what you were sharing was just gold. So hopefully we can replay some of that, but also talk about new things today. So Mike, if you could just start by sharing with our listeners a bit about your story, any of the pivots that got you to what you're doing right now in the world of facilitation and coaching.
So my journey started actually a long time ago. I started teaching when I was about 14. I grew up out of a family of teachers, both parents are teachers, and got thrust into a classroom and tried to figure out what the heck I was doing. Needless to say, I fell flat on my face multiple times, but over the course of the decades, went through a whole bunch of phases, from IT guy, that nerd in the closet who really didn't want to go outside, to standing in front of bigger and bigger groups and realizing that the teaching and facilitating, helping people create ahas, was something I just absolutely love doing. And that craft, it's interesting because, here I am, I'm actually an extreme introvert. When I learned to wear a slightly different mask of the extroverted guide that has so much fun in front of the audience and pulling them through a journey.
So I'm just curious on that. I don't know if you wanted to add more to that.
Where should I start?
Well, let's talk about the introvert part. I think that would be a great place to start. And you said you were teaching from about the age of 14. Your parents are teachers. That's had a really big influence on your life. And then you moved to IT, where we all know what that sort of role looks like. Then you discover that you love creating these aha moments. What does it take someone then to move from the IT guy that's inside and the introvert to someone that can just step in front of a workshop group and do what you do? What did it take?
So there was a bunch of different sides to that. So my progression from professionally started with, it was the IT guy. I was a programmer. I did the networking, the support side of things. And then it progressed. And I ended up doing digital transformations for businesses. Well, the one thing you learn when you go in to do a big, messy ERP project is it's all about people and it's less about technology. And that process that you go through as you get better and better at it is one that's all around training, leadership, getting people on board, getting them engaged in the process. And again, starting to lead them and guide them down a path. So I kind of had to figure it out. Now, the introvert extrovert side of things, I'm always the person who's more comfortable in a small group, but I don't mind speaking in front of an audience of 200. There's been a lot of talks where I go stand in front of the audience and I have to admit, I'm so nervous going in front of that group. Heck, I'm so nervous coming and joining you, and I'm shaking. And then I have to remind myself that nervousness and anxiety, that's just another way of excitement coming through. And you get up on stage and the introvert doesn't want to say anything, but you look in the room and go, all of these people are here for an aha moment. And how do you guide them through it? And how pull them through a story that they're going to love, that they're going to get engaged with and going to have fun with, ending with that result that you're looking for.
I love that you're talking about, so you're shifting the focus onto the audience, but also the transformation that you want to deliver for them or that they can get as a result of the work that you do. And it sort of links into what you were talking about before in terms of a digital transformation. I wrote this down. It's all about the people, not the technology. Certainly seen, observed, been part of organizations that are going through a digital transformation, but the focus has been on the technology. So when you look at these messy projects, I'm curious, we'll talk about facilitation in a moment, but any type of digital transformation, I see warning signs, oh my gosh, how is this going to end? And it's tough when you work with complex organizations. So how is it the facilitation skill or the need to be engaging really help to drive that type of transformation in complex companies?
Anytime you're talking transformation, it's a process of change leadership. It's really about going and helping people understand the why, get engaged in the process of change before you ever get to technology. In most cases, you're dealing with a company that hasn't had a major change in a very long time. So people are a little adverse to change. So the trick is to go in there, create momentum. And you do that by picking the little tiny things. What's the littlest thing I can change and make your life better with? And then when you do that, then the next slightly bigger change isn't as scary, and it's not as scary, it's not as scary. The role of the facilitator in that is incredibly important because in those initial sessions, you'll get a focus group. Say you get a team, and your job is to pull out everything that irritates the crap out of them in their jobs, but keep them focused into the space that you can fix quickly, easily, and aligns with the long term of what you're building. So if you're replacing an ERP, you don't ask them for stuff that's way outside of scope. You take a look and say, hey, that order process. And when they explain it, they give you 12 things that are wrong. Now you get them excited about it. They help them develop their own solutions. Then your team executes on that little tiny change. It took us 2 hours, but then you go back and you start closing that loop and giving them the feedback. It was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. We solved the problem you were looking for. I'd love your feedback on the next thought. How quickly the team goes from, we've always done it that way, to, oh, we can make it better. What's next? And then what you find is when you turn around and say, and they've already admitted all the problems. So when you turn around and try to show them that there's a far better way, we're going to replace this whole system. It's not as scary. The other side that most people forget when they're doing that is when you're doing a digital transformation, most people sit there and say, what's in it for me? And B, what's into me? Am I going to lose my job because of this? Facilitator's job is to take that vision and make sure that people understand how they can be engaged in the process and what the future state will look like. And I'm going a little beyond facilitator and what keeps ringing through my head here is the great session you had with MBS, with Michael Bungay-Stanier, where he said, your job as a facilitator is to be just barely adequate. And I agree with that as a pure facilitator. But when you're going through some of these bigger changes and some of the stuff that I do, your job is one part facilitator and the other part is guide. You are there to help them become the heroes and guide them down a path they've never done before so they can come out being successful. You can't be just barely adequate for that.
No.
That's where you have to be Yoda to know how to elevate them and help them rise up and see their own path and then get them through it.
Yeah. And
that's
where,
what I love doing.
So when you're the Yoda, then is it Yoda as in you're chosen Mike because you have this experience, we want you for your expertise, that you've done this before? Is it more like that type of wisdom, or is it more like the very smart, wise lines that come in when, Luke Skywalker is like down in the darkest moment? Like, is it more like then leading the energy and being like, I'm here for you, like you can do it, the cheerleader? What elements of Yoda are we talking about?
There's both aspects of that. The wise comment here and there that lift Luke up and have him realize and create his aha moment, that is the beauty of coaching. Whereas the person who says, the next step is right over there, I know you can do it. That is the other half of it. And you need to be able to play both sides.
And know when to play which side.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things that I'm going to go back to MBS's work. I've loved about his work is going in and asking the questions and making sure they understand the process, but pushing them with questions until either they make it or they're absolutely stuck. And then as they're going through it, you're being a little bit that cheerleader, because you want to encourage the engagement and the process they're going through, because you're pulling them out of the comfort zone into the growth zone every time. And the natural reaction is, it's uncomfortable. I'm going back over here. It's nice and safe and warm in that corner. So you have to be the cheerleader. You have to keep them going to the next step and pulling them along. And sometimes you turn around and say, don't worry, I've done this 1,000 times. No, I haven't. But I've done this 1,000 times. It's going to work out great. But the point is that you're keeping that uncomfortable growth zone and keeping them moving forward.
Yeah, I really like the way the process you've outlined. I've been working on a very quick change program with the client. And it's forced me to sometimes, and this is where I think leadership really comes into it, where sometimes it's like you're not a doctor, but they're throwing all their problems at you and you're like internally thinking, this is impossible. Like, how are we going to navigate it? But your chief role is to be that optimistic person. Like, if you lose hope and if you lose faith, how will the effort be sustained? So what are your thoughts on that?
That's beautiful, because you pull that right back to facilitation so very well there. The energy that you put out will determine your group's ability to get to the place they need to get to.
Yeah. And
if you come in thinking, this can't be done, guess what? You've just created reality for that room. If you go in there with a process to walk them through it, all of the confidence and energy that it can be done, not even that's going to be hard. You might tell them it's going to be uncomfortable. We're going to do a lot of really cool, challenging things, but don't worry, it's going to be so worth it, because when we get there, it's going to be this shiny.
Yeah.
You're creating the space for them. You're holding that space. You're elevating them up to be ready for the challenge and giving them the energy to get through it. And that is vital.
Yeah. It's like that beacon. Shining beacon. Yeah. And I think absolutely. And Mark Bowden talks about it as well. That was probably a very pivotal moment in an episode where he's like, don't worry about the body language. Like, you lead the energy, you lead it yourself, and they'll reflect that back at you. And that's why I think energy and state, and that's why what MBS was saying is like, yeah, you can be barely adequate, but you got to have the right energy.
Yes. And, when I mentioned teaching all of my life, I've been teaching meditation for 15 plus years.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. I didn't mention that before. So I've been teaching meditation for a very long time. And if you're calm, the energy that you're putting out can be felt in the room before you show up. you're already covering that room with the right feeling. The calmness that they need to think clearly with the energy and excitement that they need to drive to the goal. That dynamicism is the contrast, as you love to put it, is there at the energy level as the part is built into everything in that facilitation process.
I don't do meditation. I know that I need to. I don't think anyone, if I was to throw out, how would you describe me? I don't think calm would be in the top 50 words that people would use to describe me.
I'm going to question you on that one. How far did you run this morning?
6 kilometers.
So you did 6-kilometer run this morning. When you were running, how many things were, not in the first 10 minutes, but as you were going, how many things were going through your head at the same time? Did you find your brain becomes calmer and calmer as you go?
Definitely. As I go, yes.
So what's happening is you're actually getting into a meditative state through running. A lot of people get through it through yoga, through martial arts, through all of that stuff.
Interesting.
That feeling, you're at the perfect point in running where you have 100% clarity and it's just flowing.
Yeah.
That's the feeling you want when you're facilitating. And you need to tune it up and tune it down based on the room. Because if you're in sprinting mode all the time, the room gets tired. But if you're in a slow, leisurely jog, they get bored. So you'd have that contrast of moving your mental state up and down throughout the exercises. And that keeps the dynamicism there, that you can keep them on Zoom for 4 hours and they're not feeling tired afterwards.
Oh, love that. So how are you doing that? So 4-hour Zoom calls, how are you creating that contrast in terms of the energy?
There's a lot of different things that I integrate into my sessions. People log in, there's music playing. There's a big full screen countdown. It's a rock and roll show.
Oh, that's awesome.
So second by second, like a big flip clock going. We get started and I get this feeling we're going to talk about Mural a whole bunch. I have these big, beautifully designed Mural templates that work just like if I had a wall to myself, but it's designed to pull people through a story. As we're going, I'll create intense moments. I'll create quiet moments. We'll integrate humor and fun through everything because only so long you can be intense. I do strategic planning. Let's spend 4 hours on a SWOT analysis. Yeah, see how fast I have people drop off the call. But to do a 20-minute segment, then take a minute, do something fun, get them all laughing, get energy back, and then do another 20-minute segment. Fits perfectly for the way you need to manage over something more challenging like Zoom.
So let's talk about Mural and your templates. I've played in Mural, I've dabbled in it. I was part of the Never Done Before festival that Miriam did, and she had a whole agenda on Mural, and it forced me to figure out how this thing worked. That's how I sort of learned, is just by jumping in and playing around with it. Were you using Mural pre-COVID, or has it just been something that you've accelerated because of where we are at?
I went from a relatively full book of work, traveling around Canada for strategic planning sessions, to not being able to run a single session. And I didn't lose my customers because I immediately said, of course we can do this online, with my normal great confidence. And then got off the call and said, oh, crap. How am I going to figure this out? And I looked at Miro, I looked at Mural, I looked at different products. I listened to a whole bunch of your podcasts. So thank you so very much for them. And ended up picking Mural because it was the simplest of all the platforms. And the first few times I ran through it, I got to say, I used it like a flip chart. There's nothing wrong with that. It's incredibly powerful to put Post-it notes up. But then what I realized after doing a couple of dozen sessions is that Mural, if you think it through, isn't a flip chart. It's an engagement platform. So the goal is not to have them go and simply put up Post-it notes. It's how do you draw them through a story, engaging them in different ways using the tools and then using other tools. The world is not Mural. Not everyone thinks digitally first. So actually creating that multimodal feeling and then pulling it into Mural so you can pull it all together collaboratively at the end. It's been an exciting process for me because I'm a little bit nerdy like this. The people in my coaches organization laugh because they expect this stuff from me by now. I built templates for every different activity we could do. And I'm on version 27 of some of them because I facilitated it and went, this was really great, but if I had this box this way, it would look better.
Yes.
And I start off with one that has a giant snaking road down it. It's the roadmap for the day. Cool. And it stays in a tab in my browser so that when I'm sharing my screen, I can switch it back, We finished step 2. I put a big check mark icon, make it green, hit the celebrate button, create some excitement, have everybody stand up and give a round of applause because physical movement integrated in. And then it's like, here's what's next. Everyone open this mural and then go to your physical book to page 6. So I have them thinking and writing and then muraling and each time.
I love that. That's awesome.
Each time you do that, you're making them shift gears. You're resetting their attention span.
Yeah.
So you've got 5 minutes to go and brainstorm it yourself by hand. And then you're going to take your 16 ideas and wrap them around this. And then I have them actually facilitate the program while I just sit there and ask clarifying questions.
Great. So a couple of things I'm picking out about this is Mural. I love, well, first of all, it's good that the way that you started was just like a very low friction way of using it as the flip chart. So that's anyone listening, if you had an aversion to using a tool like Mural, just start by doing that. That's how I picked it up. Yuri and I were doing some brainstorming online and we just moved some Post-it notes around. And that was my first go at it. I'm like, oh, that's easy. But what I'm also picking up is the thought that goes behind it. So metaphor is very powerful, your roadmap. Yep. Something I don't really talk about a lot that I use a lot, I haven't really shared on the podcast, is the themes. Themes are really powerful. And I always look at things like if I'm doing a speech, Paddy's Day, so I'm going to bring some Irish elements into my speech. So I always look at like what's going on and how I identify themes and bring it in. So that's something you can very easily do on a platform like Mural. But also like the contrast like of physical and workbooks. That requires a bit of sort of prep. There's a lot of prep that goes into your work. Like how much time are you spending designing? I mean, you said version 27. So obviously continuous improvement's important. We can also, I spend a lot of time thinking and overthinking and updating. And are you the same?
Absolutely. You gave me, there's so many points in there. I love your themes. And integrating that in is so very important because that's some of the stuff that makes it fun. There's also a subconscious element. So with something like Mural, you can take a panorama picture and put it in the background and then use areas in front of it. And use a transparency layer so the subtle view of something amazing that they're building towards.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And people don't even clue into it other than visually it's pretty. But here you are giving them the end result that they're moving towards as you're walking them through the process. And that theming side of it, we actually build that right into strategic planning. So you create the theme around what you're trying to accomplish that quarter. And then a celebration that ties back to it as well. And that process keeps it fun, keeps it engaging, and make a game out of it. So you had that part. How much time do I spend? More than I'm willing to admit. Generally speaking, when I'm going into do a talk or something like that, a 1-hour talk is probably in the 2 to 3 days of prep range for me. If I'm going in to do like a strategic planning session, it's a minimum hour prep for hour of work. And that doesn't include creating my templates. Because I use the same 30, 40 tools, then I'm just tweaking and adjusting templates. And that part is pre-done in my downtime because that's the kind of nerd I am. But if I'm going to go, it's like I build the agenda, I do all the prep work with the client. I spend so much time gathering, not just the base information, but trying to get the little subtle details that they haven't stated in their objectives. Because if you can weave that in too, then it seems like you're absolutely Yoda and you read their mind as you went. Those coaching questions are so valuable.
Oh, the coaching questions, that's what you use to find like that stuff out. And sort of like, yeah, I know what you mean, like maybe like an offhand comment from someone. And usually you'd go past it, be like, oh, let's talk about that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, somebody makes an offhand comment. It's fantastic to pause the room and specifically ask, dive in, help to understand it more. Or there's times also when it's totally inappropriate, that offhand comment, but then I still record it. And then I'll come back to that person later or potentially offline, get more information so that I can, again, weave anything necessary through the journey that we're taking them down.
Love that.
And in the times where it's not as possible, I create an expectations board. What are you hoping to get out of this session? And some of them are on topic and some of them aren't. But it's great to be able to circle around afterwards and say, hey, you had these 10 expectations. Let's check off to make sure which we got them all and use that as one of your closing exercises to get them back to thinking about how great the session was and covered everything they needed. And you turn around and you just get, what was your biggest thing you learned from this? So they leave it with that high.
Yeah.
Reinforcing the learning.
That's awesome. And with the onboarding on Mural, like, do you find that the people that you're working with are comfortable with it, or do you have to like train them before they even jump in? Like, what's the onboarding process like? You're laughing. Is that because they've got no clue?
So I'm laughing because I just finished building another onboarding game in Mural about an hour ago.
Wow.
So I create icebreakers in Mural. And then when they're brand new people, 2 weeks before the session, Icebreaker Mural comes out, they all get an invite. I usually embed some how-to videos right in the Mural. And with a big arrow, I say, double click this. And it pops up the video and shows them how to do it. Now do this. And give them time to explore and play with it and create something that's personal about themselves that then they will share with the team. So we're actually getting them comfortable in Mural. We're getting them onboarded with it. And we're creating a little bit more trust within the team because of that.
It's really smart.
Yeah, but I do also have some teams that I never actually put them in Mural, or I have a secondary facilitator. We run the Mural for them.
Yeah.
So a lot of it depends if it's a remote team or if they're all going to be in the same boardroom. They're all in the same boardroom. I don't want computers in between them because that breaks up the energy. In that case, I have another person who will Mural for me while I facilitate. And then and we're managing the room. They use paper, and then they all look up and we bring it together in Mural.
Yeah, that's cool. I think there's a lot of listeners, and myself included, like, when are you selling these icebreaker templates?
The templates are specifically around strategic planning, but there's other ones that I'm happy to make a couple of them available. And we can talk about it offline, and you can put it up through your site.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you should totally sell them. That's awesome. Something that's pre-done. I love that. It just makes our life easier. Why reinvent the wheel if you've spent all this time like dedicated to thinking around how something like that would work? One thing you spoke about before was when you have computers that you're breaking up the energy. And we mentioned before, energy is one of the most important things. You said that you're a meditation teacher. For 15 years, you've been meditating. How do you get yourself into state, like the morning of a workshop? Is it through meditation or is it through something more intense? What's your approach?
No, my morning process of a workshop or going and doing a talk, pretty much the same every time. I'm very careful about nutrition that day and a couple of days before it. High carb, high sugar meals, right? No. Quite often, I'll be running a session for 4 to 8 hours and I don't get a break.
Yeah.
Because in between sessions, I'm going and taking care of some of the one-on-one stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, high protein, low carb meal in prep, a workout the morning of. And then once I've gotten the room prepped and I'm all comfortable, then I spend some time doing just some quiet meditation. I don't actually go back and recheck my agenda. The technical stuff is done. In my mind, it's already done and I've already been successful in the project. So at that point, it really is a matter of just getting myself into that state where the room is mine. The energy is calm, dynamic, and I'm ready to perform, really.
And I love that you do that virtually with your countdown clock. I think that's really exciting, like the music and giving it that level of certainty of when it's going to kick off. Because I think that's another thing I've found this on virtual calls is you say, all right, the meetings kick off at 10 o'clock and people might just start, like click the link at 10:01 and so you kind of like onboarding people at all different times and repeating the message and pasting the same thing into chat. So I like your idea of...
Leanne, the meetings doesn't start at 10 o'clock. The meeting starts at 9:52.
Yeah, I used to use precise times in the real world, and I haven't taken that on. I need to bring that back, the precise times.
Precise times because they're memorable. And when people show up at 9:55, you don't really care. Although I'm quite known for, I'll have my video off, my audio off. When somebody shows up at 9:55, I'll hit space and go, "You're late." And then turn the audio off because they're still listening to the music in the background, right?
That's cool.
But I'll harass them. Because the fun is so vital to this. And I want to set the tone and the energy right. So this is going to be fun, but at the same time, I'm going to hold you accountable.
Yeah. Very clever. And I like that you just, you're mixing the medium. So it's just audio, like this kind of like big brother voice coming over the top. Never even thought of doing that. I'm just using the audio and then like switching it on. So that's really cool. What about, I know you spoke about before, you got like an icebreaker, a way of designing your murals. Do you have any favorite icebreaker activities that you run either virtually or face-to-face, like Mike's go-to activity?
I love picture story. So I have people think about it in advance. I've seen it done a bunch of ways. I've seen it done where in person, where somebody brings a stack of photos of random things, people pick them, and they tell a story about themselves as it relates to the picture.
Yes.
In the virtual world, it's called Google, click images,
Yeah.
and you pick something. And I have them actually place that in the mural. So they used to copying and pasting an image into mural, but don't put their name associated with it, just with the pictures in.
Ah.
And then when we bring up the mural, go to the first picture. Okay, guys, what does this look like to you? Everyone gives a couple of ideas. I'm like, cool. So whose picture is it? Tell us a story about how this relates to you. And again, we get to know each other a little bit more. We get into a little bit of storytelling, which is, is fun. And people get to talk about themselves. So, Leanne, what's your favorite?
Well, I've got a couple, and these are just probably this is more the recency effect. Just Yuri designed one the other day. He's got sound effects that he's put on. It's like 5 sound effects. So it's using the power of audio. So basically he'll play them and you've got to write down in chat what you think they are, but you can't submit them. You got to wait till he says submit. Everyone presses enter. And then I actually like that of everyone pressing enter in chat at the same time, but I also like using the power of audio as well to do that. And then the other one is, again, I did this yesterday, got the idea from Catherine Lloyd, who was a previous guest on the show. What she did was she's an artist, so she just drew something on her iPad. It was like a Christmas theme, holiday theme image. And as we're arriving, we're using the annotate tool and we're all colouring it in. So, live to a call, everyone's like, it's just basically video and audio and chat, but it just brings another element. So I created one for Virtually Possible the other day, and I had like icons of stuff that related to virtual facilitation. So the first 5 minutes we're just chatting, and then everyone's just like playing around and colouring in.
That's awesome.
Really cool. Just a great way. It doesn't matter if anyone's late because everyone's like chilled out, just having fun. And yeah, I thought so I created one in Canva, very easy. Yeah, that's been my favorite. But ask me again next week.
It'll be an all new one.
Yeah.
And for those of you in the audience who don't have a list of icebreakers, go into Session Lab.
Yeah.
Session Lab has like 400 icebreakers on there. It's fantastic. And just adapt it to virtual.
You can get lost in Session Lab. You can spend so much time on there.
I've never gone to bed and fallen asleep on Session Lab, really.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, what else is there? It's very addictive. It's great. Great call out. So what's your advice for first-time facilitators, Mike? I know like you had this interesting background and you do a lot of different things. You're designing, you're facilitating, you're coaching, running strategy days. What advice would you offer someone that's keen to start their career in facilitation?
Funny, I've never thought I was going to start a career in facilitation. My first one would always be prepared well in advance, and then don't worry about it afterwards. Good. Too often, facilitators, speakers get so wrapped up in the tools and the agenda and the exact steps they're going to go through that they come out so nervous in their session. Prepare, know it, walk away. Relax and be yourself.
Relax into yourself. That's good.
And then the one that I carry with me every day is nervousness is really just excitement in a different form.
Yeah.
And your Facebook group is fantastic because you have so many first-time facilitators going in there going, what do I do? What do I do? And, you want to just say, relax and have fun. But that is intimidating as a first-time facilitator. It's like, no, know your stuff. And then just take that excitement and channel it out.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, and I love that reframe of nervous energy into excitement. That's I absolutely still tell myself that as well. It's like it just means you're excited and and have fun. I love some great lessons there for all of us. That I still see every opportunity as is a first time facilitation opportunity. So, Mike, it's been awesome chatting to you and hearing just about the breadth of your experience, change, the work that you're doing in Mural, how you think about contrast, energy, and the fact that you meditate and you're focused on nutrition as well, even 2 to 3 days out. I found really interesting. So if anyone would like to connect with you, find out more about the work that you do, where should we send them?
LinkedIn is probably best. Yeah. I'm Mike Knapp on LinkedIn. Or you can go to our website at incrementa.ca.
Perfect. And we'll pop a link to both of those in the show notes. I'm connected with Mike, so definitely hit him up on LinkedIn. It's a fun playground, LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being on the show, Mike. It's been awesome connecting with you again. I'm glad we got to record this one and hear about all your experiences and awesome practical tips for us to use in our next virtual workshop. So thank you.
And thank you. It's always fun talking with you, Leanne. I'd love to do this more often.
We could talk for hours. Thanks, Mike. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around. You've reached the end of another episode of the First Time Facilitator podcast. Connect with the show at firsttimefacilitator.com or follow me on Instagram at Leanne Hughes to find out what I'm up to during the week. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it with someone who will also appreciate the insight, and make it easier for yourself and subscribe to the show in your podcast player of choice. Thank you so much for listening, and chat to you next week.